De-dollarization is a term that's been floating around for some time now. One definition by JP Morgan says it entails a significant reduction in the use of dollars in world trade and financial transactions, decreasing national, institutional, and corporate demand for the greenback. The BRICS, led by original members, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are among the nations looking to reduce their exposure to the dollar. The American currency has dominated for decades because it is highly liquid, trades freely, and is seen as stable in uncertain times. And in many cases, it is the best way to do business. Imagine this: a Brazilian farmer selling coffee beans to a Japanese buyer. The farmer will not want yen, and the buyer will not have reals. So they use dollars instead, streamlined by the global SWIFT payment system. This makes international transactions faster and cheaper. But the dollar is being dented by President Donald Trump's trade and tariff policies, along with his budget bill, which is expected to add trillions of dollars over the next decade to America's already giant debt. Global investors no longer expect the U.S. economy to outperform the rest of the world, and so they've dumped the dollar. The greenback is sitting at a 3-year low and just marked its worst start to a year since 1973. The de-dollarization discussion is getting more serious.
It is certainly a compelling proposition that the dollar should be losing its dominance, because the U.S. has used the dominance of the dollar in ways that have not necessarily been good for the rest of the world, because every U.S. monetary policy action, every U.S. policy shift ends up having implications for the rest of the world, and sometimes those are not very good implications. But in addition, the U.S. has weaponized the dollar by using its dominance to impose financial sanctions on a lot of rivals and even against some traditional allies.
More alternatives are emerging. The BRICS bloc has created financing options that reduce reliance on traditional institutions such as the World Bank and IMF. It's proposed a digital system known as BRICS Pay, and it continues to pursue bilateral agreements to conduct trade in member currencies. For example, 95% of Russia-China trade now bypasses the dollar entirely. But globally, de-dollarization is not an imminent reality.
I'd say now the dollar's still going to predominate in global commercial transactions for the next few years, but its role is likely to decline. We're providing an opportunity for China, for Europe, for other countries to start to provide a potential alternative to the dollar for many of these transactions. That can be a good thing. I mean, the decline in the value of the dollar enhances our competitiveness in global trade. Of course, it also increases the cost of imports, right?
So the world desperately wants to diversify away from the dollar. The harsh reality, though, is that in an international monetary system, you do need currencies that every country can coordinate on. And given the weaknesses in practically every other country, either in terms of their financial market structure, their economic dynamism, or their institutional framework, there really isn't a viable alternative out there.
So in an absolute sense, the dollar may have lost some of its dominance. But in fact, in a relative sense, it remains atop the entire world of currencies, with all the other currencies essentially battling it out for second, third, fourth, and additional places. So this is not really a story about American exceptionalism, but really a story about financial fragilities, economic weakness, and institutional weaknesses in the rest of the world. That's why the US dollar is expected to remain dominant, perhaps for more decades. It makes up 54% of all export invoicing, 57% of forex reserves, and 88% of global forex trading. King Dollar's crown may be slipping, but it's still a long way from falling off. For CNA Explains, I'm Olivia Marzuki.